Okay, I'm going to be blunt. In this video, I'm going to prove that both the Department of Justice and the FBI are trying to sweep under the rug one of the most disgusting operations of human trafficking in recent history. And we're talking, of course, about Jeffrey Epstein. Now, whether you want to call it a client list or a blackmailing list or a black book, we're going to prove with pure logic and reasoning that all the records of this operation, including the names of the criminals who were Epstein's accomplices, helpers, and partners in crime, are being concealed from the public for some reason. Hello and welcome back, my body language buddies. My name is Jesus Enrique Rosas. I'm the body language guy, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you don't miss any of my body language analysis and tips. Let's get down to it. So we are going to start with the number one. What Epstein was really doing. Let's start from the beginning. Jeffrey Epstein did not just have a rich person party house. He had a highly organized system to bring in very young women and girls, some underage, to be abused sexually. These were not random encounters. It was systematic, happening over many years, in different locations like New York, Florida, New Mexico, and his private island. This means that we are not talking about a one-time crime or a small mistake. We're talking about a decades-long criminal business with different moving parts that needed to work together. So, just from the scale of the operation, you're starting to realize that he and Ghislaine Maxwell just couldn't have done it all on their own. Which leads into number two. You cannot run an operation without keeping track of everything. Imagine that you run even a small delivery service, like pizza delivery. I just came up with that example. But anyway, you will need lists. Who orders, where to deliver, where to get your fresh ingredients, maintenance of all the appliances of the kitchen, who paid, who to call if there's a problem. Now, imagine Epstein's case. It's like a giant illegal delivery service, except that instead of pizzas, he was moving people, arranging meetings, hiding identities, booking flights, managing staff, and keeping powerful guests happy. Because at the very least, we know that many people either flew with him on his private jet or visited his private island and other properties. Without some kind of list, he would not know who was coming to visit, which victim or girl to schedule for each guest, which staff to assign for cleaning, catering, or security, when the private jets were taking off or landing, where the guests were supposed to sleep or hide. This is common sense. Even legal businesses need records, so a dangerous and illegal business needs them even more to control risk and keep leverage. Now, you might ask, leverage over what? Well, leverage over all those implicated, keeping it all as private as possible. Which brings us to number three. He needed leverage to stay alive. Epstein was not dealing with the low-level criminals. He was connected to very powerful people, politicians, billionaires, royals, and also famous scientists and academics. Why would these powerful people allow a single man to know their darkest secrets and not immediately eliminate him? The answer: Epstein had leverage. His client list could have just been a contact list, meaning names, dates, photos, all the videos recorded from the many cameras installed in all his properties, witness records. All that was his weapon to keep himself safe. And let's think for a minute that he was not only trafficking people, he was also getting people to know each other, connecting scientists with people who could invest in their projects. So if you had a party with a famous scientist, powerful politicians, and even royalty, that would add status to the party itself. Without a very thorough list to keep track of everything, as in who went to which party and for what reason, who was in which location, who met whom at each time, he would be completely vulnerable. Any guest could have exposed him to authorities, and he would have been jailed decades earlier. He only survived because people knew he could bring them down. Every single one of them. So, if there were truly no list or no book or whatever, Epstein would have no leverage. That would be like walking into Chicago's Washington Park, screaming the N-word and hoping for the best. But now, we need to play devil's advocate with a number four. Even if it was just for himself, he needed an army of helpers. Let's pretend for a moment that Epstein never shared any of the girls with the guests. Let's say, for argument's sake, that it was all just for himself. Even if in this imaginary scenario, he still needed pilots to fly private jets, cooks and catering staff to prepare meals and keep guests fed, maids and cleaners to maintain the houses and disinfect rooms, drivers and security guards to escort girls, pick up guests, watch the perimeter, booking agents or schedules to arrange travel, accommodations, and activities, doctors or wellness staff to handle emergencies or keep victims quiet, and of course lawyers and accountants to handle money and hush money payments. All of these people saw things. They knew who came and went. They knew the condition of the victims. They heard rumors. They saw guests arrive at odd hours. They saw who went into private rooms. These workers would be forced to sign NDAs, non-disclosure agreements, or be threatened into silence. Yet, even if they never spoke publicly, there would still be paperwork, receipts, employment records, flight logs, and supply invoices, everything. It is impossible to run such a complex hidden operation without these logistical people, and they would inevitably produce a trail. And with that trail, we land on number 5. Financial records prove connections. Epstein did not operate for free. He moved millions of dollars through shell companies, trust funds, and mysterious donations. When powerful people visited, they sometimes gave donations to his so-called foundations or offered consulting fees to hide payments. Even if nobody ever wrote for illegal services on a check, you still see money moving to charter jets, to hire extra staff, to book entire islands or properties, certain unexplained loans or gifts. All of this leaves a financial trail. I mean, the IRS and banks keep copies of these records for years. A serious investigation would reveal all the connections just by following the money. So if there is no list, then either the financial records are being hidden or destroyed, which is impossible because every institution involved would keep a copy, or someone is deliberately ignoring them. Not to mention number 6, guests' own schedules would expose them. Let's look at this from another angle, the guests themselves. Epstein's visitors didn't beam down from space. They booked flights, they canceled public appearances, they had security details. Every celebrity or politician has staff, assistants, and travel agents. If a well-known figure disappears for 3 days to go to Epstein's island, there are logs, there are private jet manifests which are kept by aviation authorities, security detailed travel plans, customs or immigration entries because of international travel, hotel or property guest logs. Even if fake names are used, payments will leave a trace. It is impossible for dozens, if not hundreds, of high-profile people to repeatedly vanish without leaving a record, especially in a world where paparazzi and journalists track movements obsessively. Which brings us to number 7. Intelligence connections require records. Let's go full Alex Jones on this. Epstein has long been rumored to have ties to intelligence services, possibly as a blackmail asset. Intelligence agencies do not operate on "trust me bro" notes. They require proof of who is the mark, who is going to be compromised, photos, videos, and schedules, a clear record of who received favors so they can be controlled later. In intelligence work, a blackmail asset without documentation is worse than useless. In fact, it ends up becoming a liability. So, if Epstein was really being used to gather compromising information, he needed a meticulously detailed client list or blackmail archive. But well, maybe he was just a guy who wanted tons of fresh for himself. Now let's do a reasoning exercise with number 8. Reductio ad absurdum, proof by absurdity. Let's imagine a world where Epstein never kept a list. He would not know which girl to assign to which guest, or to himself. He would not know which guest was arriving on which day. he would not know what preferences each guest had. He would not have any insurance to stop guests from betraying him. His entire operation, even if it was just for himself, would have been exposed almost immediately. Staff and helpers would not know what to prepare for, leading to constant mistakes, and mistakes, when you're doing illegal stuff, lead to unwanted exposure. It would be like trying to run a huge international hotel chain without any reservation system, without any guest logs, and without any payment records, while doing something illegal as f***. This is obviously impossible. The logical conclusion is that the no-list claim is absurd. And that's why so many people are so pissed with Pam Bondi, Kash Patel, Dan Bongino, and of course Donald Trump. But wait, there's more! Number 9. Silence of the helpers and employees. Even if we accept that you must hide victims' identities to protect their privacy, as Bondi said at some point, that is the right thing to do, what about all the people who worked for Epstein? You remember? The pilots, the catering staff who cooked for guests and saw them at dinner tables, the drivers who picked up and dropped off girls and VIPs, the housekeepers, the security guards who monitor cameras and saw everything happening on the property, the accountants and lawyers. All these people still exist. Their internal logs, contracts, pay slips, and travel schedules still exist. There is no way all these auxiliary witnesses simply vanish into thin air without leaving some kind of traceable document trail. And not all of them were innocent and naive witnesses. You can imagine that some of them were flat-out accomplices who Epstein trusted and they should be prosecuted. But before we reach the inevitable conclusion, we need to address one more point. Number 10. Let's address a popular excuse some people float to explain why there is no client list release. They say, maybe the Department of Justice is concealing the list, not exposing the big fish, so they can fry them later for something bigger than statutory rape. Let's pretend for a moment that this is true. Even if the Department of Justice really was holding back the most powerful names to build bigger cases, that does not explain why they have taken zero action against the small fish. You remember that we were talking about scientists, artists, bankers, entrepreneurs, politicians, royalty, you name it, hanging out with Epstein? And we were talking about operational accomplices as well. It is impossible to believe that every single person involved with Epstein was a top-level big fish so valuable they need to be kept secret to be taken down later or keep them in constant blackmail. There must be mid-level and small-time people like small fish who are still guilty and could be prosecuted right now. If the Department of Justice and the FBI were truly serious about sending a message to this big fish, they could easily start by releasing or prosecuting these lower-tier collaborators. Doing so would achieve two things at once. It would demonstrate to the public that justice is real and active, and it would put pressure on the bigger players by showing that no one is immune. The fact that they have chosen to release nothing at all to protect not only the alleged high-level conspirators, but also somehow, for some reason, also protect the entire supporting structure of smaller enablers and anybody who remotely cooperated or was employed in the operation, that's an insult to anyone's intelligence. It suggests not a strategy to catch bigger fish, but a coordinated effort to protect everyone, big and small, and maintain this wall of silence around the entire operation. This alone reveals that the narrative of waiting to fry the big fish is logically impossible if even the smallest fry are left untouched. When you put all this together, it becomes logically impossible for Epstein to have run this complex, long-term, international criminal operation without keeping some form of list, record, or blackmail archive, even if he was the only customer. The idea that there is no client list is an absurd fairy tale meant to comfort powerful people and distract the public. And that's one of the reasons why I told you it was so important, the wording that Pam Bondi used when she appeared alongside Donald Trump, saying that Epstein had downloaded the videos, not recorded them.
Also, to the tens of thousands of video, they turned out to be child downloaded by that disgusting Jeffrey Epstein. Downloaded.
Big difference, because it means Pam Bondi wants to gaslight us into believing that Epstein was just sitting alone on his island, downloading gross videos from the internet, and that's it. So much for protecting women and girls. So in summary, if you can't run a pizza delivery without a list of customers and orders, you definitely cannot run a global trafficking and blackmailing empire without knowing who you're serving. But again, I would like to remind you that I am not suicidal, and I would like to know what you think about this in the comments. Don't forget to check my other videos on the Epstein case. My name is Jesus Enrique Rosas. I'm the bottle language guy. Much love and bliss.